Good evening, everyone. Today is March 4th, 7:30 p.m. And as planned, we are going to be having an event to mark a very special day, the Women's Day. Ideally, Women's Day is celebrated once a year. But why just once a year? It should be every day. Nonetheless, we have a very special guest today, Miss Shalini Gupta, who is going to be the guest speaker to mark women's empowerment and talk about it, what it means for a female to have her experiences be shared, especially immigrants who come and make a life out of here in the US. Welcome, Shalini Gupta. Welcome to the Women's Empowerment event. How are you?
Wonderful. Thank you, Pramila. Thank you, Sanjeevni, for giving me the opportunity to talk to you all today about the women's empowerment journey, significant milestone, challenges, and the path forward. This is a topic very, very close to my heart. Um, I have lived as a female and as a mother of a female and a grandmother of a female. I yearn to see a world which is completely equitable. The playing field is completely level, and we see women having the absolutely same opportunities, rights that men have in this world. And unfortunately, that has not been the history for women. And that's what we are going to talk about today. So I I especially like to talk about this topic because of my professional background as a change management consultant in large corporations. And I have also focused on diversity and inclusion, which includes women and gender issues, and also sat on the diversity board of a Fortune 500 company. So I'll talk to you today. Today's session is about talking about significant milestones since the journey started, um, organizations that have been working very, very hard to get to where we are today and the gap from where we want to be. So, next slide, please. So, let's talk a little bit about women's empowerment and what that means. When I said earlier that I want to see women being the exact same equal to men in every sphere, let's talk about what those spheres are. So, equal rights, uh, legally and socially, no exceptions. Um, so I just want to do a quick check and see how many participants do we have.
Uh,
So
we
right
have, yeah, we are, I think team would be joining in momentarily, but it's also Facebook Live.
now, okay,
So, maybe we have audiences there.
yeah. So when we talk about equal rights, we are talking about laws. So can someone talk about what some of the most important laws have been that have given women equal access? So right now we don't have a lot of people, so maybe I'll keep it more to uh, talking mode rather than interactive. So the right to vote, for example, or the right to own property, these were not there historically, but these were things that women's empowerment organizations have fought for and gained. Equal opportunities, which means access to education, career, and growth. So there are many countries in which girls are not educated, so they don't have equal access to education. I mean, we come from South Asian countries, and we know that there a lot of the times people will educate their sons, but they will not give their daughters the same education. I think a lot of professional women have seen that advancement or career growth opportunities in corporations in different careers has not been the same, and they've faced significant barriers to that. The next segment is equal representation. So, in leadership, politics, and public life. Uh, in in leadership, uh, in our and in corporations, how many women make it to managerial level? Uh, are are there as managers or senior leadership? Is there equal representation? We'll talk about the numbers later, but right now we are talking about the different pillars that constitute a complete equality. So when I define women's empowerment, it's complete and unequivocal equity and parity in all spheres of life, not just in law, but in everyday reality. So equal representation in corporations, in politics and public life. Another pillar that is important is self-determination, which is full participation in decisions that shape our lives. So do women have the right to make important decisions about what career they want to choose, what who they want to marry, where they want to live, how they want to live, how they want to spend their money, all those kind of decisions? Are they free to make those decisions for themselves? Another sphere that we talk about is financial freedom. So are women financially independent? Can they support themselves? And I think that's a very important pillar to empowerment. Because when you're financially not independent, when you're dependent on somebody else, you can be under their control. And the last one is freedom from harm. So a lot of the time, we see instances of murder, rape, violence, uh, sexual harassment, discrimination. All of these are pillars that women need to be free from harm. I mean, there have been some very important recent incidents, and it continues to happen that women are murdered even when they've left a marriage and they are happily married to someone else, and the former husband comes and kills the woman. I'm sure, Pramila, you can talk about that because you field a lot of calls. I mean, this is one of those pillars that Sanjeevni does a lot of work around, correct?
That is very correct, Shalini. The sad situation is there are so many laws which have been made, but community is still not aware of it. They do not know how to exercise them, and they do not know how to fight for those rights. So that is what we have been observing. And we also want to welcome our other audiences, Jyotsna and Yashwini. It's an interactive session. Please, Shalini, I assume they can also voice in their opinions to this.
Absolutely. I want it to be a dialogue and I want it to be as interactive as possible. So, next slide, please. Panna. Panna, next slide. Okay, let's talk about the women's empowerment journey in the US. Let's talk about US milestones because we are all in the US right now. 1848, that's roughly 125 years ago, this journey started with the Seneca Falls Convention, which launched. Have people heard about the suffrage movement in the United States? How many people, let's have a show of hands, how many people have heard about the suffrage movement? So Jyotsna and Yashwini, we can't, oh, okay. So that's the organized movement that started the women's empowerment journey. And that was in 1848. So that's fairly recent, in my opinion, like, maybe 125 years ago or less than 150 years. It wasn't till the 1920s that women got the right to vote. So the 19th Amendment of the Constitution granted them the right to vote. It wasn't till 1963, and that's not too far back. It's kind of makes you very somber when you realize that a lot of the progress has been very recent. 1963, we got sex-based employment and wage discrimination was prohibited. So the employers could not, discriminate based on gender. And 1974, we got the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, which enabled women to access credit without a male co-signer. Okay, thank you, Yashwini. We noted your comment that we passed the act, but not necessarily implemented till now. First Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, sworn in 1981. That was a big milestone. How many women are there in the current Supreme Court Justice? Anybody? How many women do we have right now?
I don't know.
So I think currently there are 4.
Mhm.
There have been 6 women who've served on the US Supreme Court. And so to 2013, the military combat ban lifted. Women were granted full access to US military combat positions. And of course, we all know in 2020, first Vice President Kamala Harris. So these are pretty recent, some of them are pretty recent events. Next slide, please.
So, Shalini, one question which our audiences often ask, well, it's Women's Day. When we say the definition empowerment, per your working and per your experience across different areas, how would you define what exactly is empowerment for a woman? Is it ability to make decisions? Is it being at equality uh, or equity, or what is it?
So I think if we go back to the second slide, Panna, can we go back to that slide? We talked about those pillars
Mhm.
that define empowerment
Okay,
before
so
that.
it's a multi-level
Multi
tier. Okay.
equal rights, equal opportunities, free from harm, ability to make decisions, financial freedom, representation. That's a big one. Are we seeing 50% women in key posts, in key political and corporate level? And I'll come to the numbers a little later in the presentation. What are we
Thank you.
seeing right now? Okay. And if your question was, which do I think is most important? I think they're stepping stones. At the very base of it is the work Sanjeevni is doing, which is women should be free from harm. They
Absolutely.
shouldn't have to face. I think that's the first level.
That's a basic foundation. That's basic
That's the
foundation.
basic foundation. That's a right to not be facing harm. Okay, so going back to the important milestones in our journey, women's empowerment journey, global milestones. We talked about US earlier. So United Nations, 1945, it was formed and their charter enshrined equal rights for women. That's a big deal. 1949, the second sex was published, which became a feminist landmark. And some of the key things in the second sex, which is a document, talk about women as the other. Women are not born into that status, they are conditioned and they created. That category is a creation in a man's world. And it talks about oppression as a systemic thing. So that became the feminist landmark. I know we all like to talk about 1960 and 66 when we had the first female prime ministers of countries. First was 60 Sri Lanka, Bandaranaike. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. And Indira Gandhi, we all know, all of us are Asian, many of us from India, in 1966. 1970s to 90s was second and third wave feminism and basically focused on reproductive rights and domestic violence. And I think this is an area, domestic violence, which, again, as I said, Sanjeevni does a lot of work around. And of course, in our lifetimes, in very recent 2017, we saw the Me Too movement, which happened as a result of the Harvey Weinstein case, where he was accused of sexual assault. And then a lot of women became vocal and started talking about their harassment, and it became a movement about sexual harassment. Next slide.
And Shalini, the Me Too movement still goes on. It's just not called out often enough.
Correct. So, a quick overview of some of the global and advocacy organizations that have achieved the progress we are seeing today. So, at the global level, there's UN Women. As we said, they set the standards and policies. Equality Now, they work on transforming laws and practices across the globe that are unfair to women. Center for Reproductive Rights, as the name says, it's about reproductive freedom. And another one, Global Fund for Women, it funds grassroots organizations that across the globe. Oh, so we have a note from Jyotsna Batra. Now, Men Too Movement campaign is also on. Wonderful. My son was asking me when I was telling him about doing this session today. So, when are we going to talk about men's empowerment? So nice to hear about the Men's Too movement. But again, it's not going to be of the same type because men have not been historically as a group suppressed. And so the people who have been historically suppressed as a group by society, like women or uh, or African American people or different castes back in India, those are the ones that we need to focus on first. I'm sure there are very specific issues for men that need to be addressed, and that's important as well. Then there are a couple of organizations that provide either education, Camp Fed working in Africa, Women for Women International that provides vocational training and resources for women survivors of conflict. Just to give you a little context, these are just a few of the large organizations. There are hundreds and hundreds of organizations that have worked to get us to where we are. Next slide, please. Okay, some of the US-based legal and political organizations. So now, National Organization for Women is probably the largest feminine activist organization. National Women's Law Center, again, working on legal issues for economic security. ACLU is not just only focused on women, American Civil Liberties Union, and I belong to a nonprofit organization called United for Peace. Our mission is to create communities that are nonviolent, can resolve conflicts without violence, and there's inclusion and acceptance of everybody, so which includes gender, which includes females as well. And we worked with ACLU in some of our projects. We worked with ACLU. Represent Women. Again, this is about representation. We talked about the pillar of representation, and there used to be something called affirmative action earlier. When I worked in corporate career, affirmative action was pretty big in the 80s and 90s, and then it kind of fell out of favor. That was reserving, in India, it was called reservation. So certain posts, certain percent of seats were reserved for protected classes or underrepresented classes. It was also happening, I don't know how much it happens today in university admissions or schools, but there was in at least in college, there used to be some kind of equal representation that they used to follow. That has kind of fell out of favor. Uh, there's a pros and cons of that, and it also kind of shifts with the current political system. National Domestic Workers Alliance, and it advocates for labor protections, especially for women of color, which we all are. Okay, next slide, please. So here we are with the numbers. So at a very broad level, women do 2.5 times the unpaid care work than men globally. And these numbers are from UN data, so they are sort of global numbers. They're not specific to any one country. It's going to vary by country, but that's care work means child care, elderly care. 30%, so managerial roles. We're still only at 30%. Does that surprise anybody? So Yashwini is asking if we have numbers for the US. Oh,
It
she's
does
saying
not surprise. It does
doesn't
not
surprise.
surprise at all. No.
Yeah. So 30%, and they say parity is 100 years away. So it'll take another 100 years for us to get to equal level. That is very sobering. I wanted to see this equity in my lifetime, and 100 years, I'm certainly not going to live by then.
So I was just checking the numbers for US and it's about between 42 to 46%. So it's slightly better than the overall average, but yeah, still not there. Still not at 50.
So globally, 27.2% parliament seats as of January 2025. It's again roughly almost about 1 in 4. 1/4. Female heads of state, 29 countries have a female head of state. So in 60 and 66, we saw the first two, and now we have 29. So from 66 to now, which is what, about 60 years, we have 29. Now, this is very shocking. This statistic is very shocking. Is 1 in 4 intimate partner violence. Pramila, are you shocked by this? From what you hear and see in Sanjeevani, are you shocked that 1 in 4 women experience intimate partner violence in their
It's
lifetime?
actually 1 in 3 now.
It's 1 in 3. Oh my God. Okay.
And Shalini, it does not matter if it's a developed country or a developing country or a country which is as advanced. Sometimes the intimate partner violence is rooted into the community or how it works on. So it does not matter rich or poor, educated or not having the necessary education, status, job. It means nothing. So intimate partner violence unfortunately permeates all bedrooms. And most often, our clients, when they come to us, they say, "You don't know what happens behind the doors." Yeah. And we have a lot of these shelters here, and it's very sad and unfortunate. They're always full.
So tell us a little bit more about your shelters, if you don't mind.
Shanjini does not have a shelter of its own, but we work across 7 different shelters in the Chicagoland area. So if there are clients who reach us who need a safe place, we work with them dependent on what area they are in.
Okay.
But it's, yeah, but in all the 10 years that we have worked with, there has never been an instance to say it's available, just walk in. The
Right.
shelters are
And
always full. Yeah.
we've seen some recent incidents where, the security has been provided to the woman. There's an order out by the judge. This incident that happened in Chicago where the guy went to Ohio after a decade. 10 years later, he went and murdered his ex-wife and her husband while their 2 children were upstairs. While they slept, he got in the house. I mean, can you imagine the kind of anger and violence that this person has carried inside of them simply because they have not been able to control? Why did she get away? Why is she happy now? Why did she
It's all
find
about power and control,
it's
bottom
all
line.
about power and control? And then we had another incident in Oswego, which is very close to where I live. Uh, and the guy followed her through the garage, and her new husband was watching on the security camera, alerted the police. By the time they got there, she was dead.
Yeah, Shalini, may I answer a question from Yashwini?
Yeah, sure.
Her question is, it takes a lot of courage to ask for help too. Absolutely. And in fact, research has shown that it takes up to 7 tries for a female to either walk out or ask for help. So when our clients call us, we know it has taken them a lot of courage to reach so far. But the positive part is, Yashwini, we always tell our clients, help is there. All you have to do is ask. But to ask is, 7 steps journey at least to reach that point.
Yeah. So the last statistic here is 40% school dropout. 40%, again, remember, this is global. 40%, and Yashwini wants to thank you, Pramila. We all want to thank you for the work you do. Wonderful work.
We're all part of the community, Shalini, Yashwini, Jyotsna, Megha, Panna, and cumulatively we all work towards it. But appreciated it, Yashwini. We're all in it together to make this community work and move on. So
Thank you. So now we're talking a little bit. Can we go back to? So now we're talking a little bit about what are specific challenges to women's empowerment. So let me ask you this question. This statement, true empowerment means rejecting the idea that the current system is natural, inevitable, or deserved. So now I put that statement out and let me ask, how many of you have encountered someone who believes that women who don't reject that idea vis-a-vis women, that they think that women not being equal is natural, inevitable, or deserved? Anybody here wants to talk about? So Yashwini is saying not natural. But
it
have
is
you
not natural. That's why we are having this session.
Yeah.
exactly?
But we've all come across women, I mean, at least growing up in India, we've seen a lot of women from different areas of the society who think this is just how it is supposed to be. Yeah. I think they're not financially independent or they're dependent on, others for things. I don't know, Megha, did you want to pitch in?
The other thing, Panna, we take things for granted just because it was happening in such a way, or this is the way you have been raised, or a person has been raised, that is the norm. We are, in general, women are not taught to question, to challenge the status quo. So whatever has been given is the norm, which, should be changed. And hopefully the new generation coming up will voice it and ask for the right answers. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the phenomenon we say in diversity work is internalized oppression. what that means is that you have swallowed these beliefs that you are less than. So you have come to believe that you are less than. So you're not going to challenge, as Pramila say, or ask for equal rights. You're not even going to perceive when you're not getting it. You don't. So I'll give you an example. When my mother-in-law came and started living with us, uh, if my husband and I got into an argument, she would come to me and say, you know what, you should just stay quiet. One person has to keep the peace. And I was like, but he's your son. Why don't you ask your son? Why don't you give this advice to your son? But she came from a conditioning that believed that women should be the peacemakers, women should be the ones giving in. And so that was internalized for her. So that itself was an example of internalized oppression. And if I believed that as well, I would have that internalized oppression. So the first thing we have to do, which is a challenge, is to recognize the inequality. So systemic pillars. The second challenge that we have is that these belief systems, social, are wrapped in and packaged in pillars of our social system, in our stories, in our traditions, in our rituals, in our norms, even in media. So when women assert themselves, then she's being aggressive. A man does the same thing, he's being assertive. So the same action, same behavior is viewed differently when it's a man or a woman. And so sometimes even children's stories will carry these biases. Some of the rituals we do and some of our wedding rituals in the Indian culture, like the girls, dowry is an example of a ritual which is inequitable. In the olden days, we used to have sati, and that was, inequitable to women. Again, the stories that are passed on from generation to generation. So it's very difficult. These are like layers, and you have to keep peeling the layer and recognizing the inequity in every layer and change that. Ask that to be changed for a system to change. Otherwise, it's like tentacles. You take care of one, and the others will still grip.
So I just want to bring a reference. You mentioned dowry, and you mentioned that, this is a ritual happened in the South Asian countries, especially say India. You'll be very surprised, and also the attendees of the session. Dowry issue happens here in the US. A lot of the community women still are responsible that their parents give the dowry on a continuing basis to their respective spouses. Spouses threaten them, if your parents are not giving me XYZ, leave the house, the relationship ends. So, and many women have continued 5 years, 10 years. The maximum that we interacted was a woman married for 15 years. 15 years the dowry was given to her parents. They live here in the US,
Yeah,
and
And
but
they're
their
Americans or
spouses are very well placed.
are they coming from South Asian background or are they
Yeah,
white
yeah.
Americans? South
South
oh,
Asian.
that's
Asian
fine.
background.
Yeah, yeah,
Still
yeah.
sad and unfortunate again.
Very sad. Very sad. Okay, next slide, please. So let's talk about South Asian women in America. So we're really living between two worlds. So we are still caught in some Eastern traditions. In some ways, I would say that the Indian community has made their little India. And but we are governed by Western laws and in some ways their social norms. So it's a very complex and unique experience. So let me ask the question: are South Asian women in America, and let everybody respond, so by a show of hand, if you can, are South Asian women in America better off than their counterparts in India? Do you think we are better off here than women in India?
Some ways, yeah, depends. I should say depends.
Can you say a little more, Pramila?
So,
In what ways are we better?
financial aspect, financial freedom is a little bit more here as compared to women in India.
Mm-hmm.
That again, I'm not saying it's like, 100% better, but that aspect is better. The ability to exercise decisions is more here as compared to there. But again, it also depends from, California is very different from Chicago. New York is equally different. If you go to Dallas, if you go to Texas, if you go to Florida, women are different. If you go to Denver, Colorado, it's different. If you go to Alaska, it's different. So it depends on the area. Like in India, like if you're in Mumbai, if you're in Delhi, the women are much smarter than their counterparts who live on the rural side or in the smaller cities. But yes, financial freedom is better. Ability to make decisions for their children or for themselves, it's a little bit better as compared to India, is my personal observation.
Sure.
Yeah.
Anybody else wants to comment on that? Panna?
I think
I
even freedom from rituals and like the patriarchy of their previous generations, because they're away from, their parents, in-laws, everybody. So I think that way they're slightly better off. Like they don't have to follow the rigid rituals. Yeah, I think Yashwini wanted to add something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it varies. Not necessarily. What I'm finding is we do have rituals and all that stuff, and it is still exercised, no matter how educated you are. But it depends upon the family and the um, caste, quote unquote. I'm surprised that it still exists here. Um, not I was very surprised, but it does exist here. Are they better off? Probably we just have a better method of reporting. I can call 911 more easily. Other than that, I'm not sure.
So, a few examples, like you can call 911, it'll be taken seriously. Uh, you can, if you have a divorce, you would have so the homemaker role, even if you've not been earning, is recognized here. And you would have a 50-50 division of the assets, combined assets of the family. That's not the law in India. So, here's a very quick example of legally you're not at parity with what you're experiencing here. So there are some subtle differences. Of course, culturally, it all depends on your family and what's the belief systems that are existing in your own home. So my next question is: are South Asian women in America worse off than non-South Asian women in the U.S.? Are we worse off than our counterparts, white or other counterparts here? Anybody want to any statement? Pramila, what do you think?
Compared to non-Asian,
Yeah, like so are we here living here? Are we worse off than white women living here?
though I don't have the statistics here, but definitely if you look into the Caucasian counterpart, they are way ahead of the Asian woman. Uh, yes.
So I think Yashuni, you wanted to say something. Go ahead. So Megha, you I think you've got your thumbs down. Can you say more what you want to say?
Hi, Auntie. Yes. I think yes, I feel like we do face unique barriers. And of course, it depends on whether you're an immigrant or if you're first generation. But I don't think we're worse off than I think worse is like a bit strong, but I do think we face unique expectations. Like we might be expected to work harder than our white counterparts in the office or face different pressures, I guess. But I think it's just a different experience. I wouldn't say it's worse, depending on your level of privilege.
Okay.
See, you bring a very good point, Mega. So for a corporate world, it may be a little different answer. If you're talking the household thing, that's where I was coming from. That these issues exist in other cultures too. We just don't know as much. But I have seen this in Caucasian, stay-at-home mom, uh, definitely in African American and Hispanics.
Mhm.
One small difference, what I have noted, at least through Sanjeevani, is South Asian women uh, think of it as a stigma to share their concerns, whereas people of other cultures, they are not having that inhibition to speak out. Hey, something is not right, or I'm in an abusive relationship. I need to go to therapy. I need to get medication. That's all acceptable.
Yeah. So, my own personal take is that yes, some of our cultural traditions where women have been kept down uh, create barriers for us, the cultural expectations. So, a working woman, Asian woman, even over here, I have friends who are doctors, and they would come home, and the prime bulk of the household responsibility would still fall on the woman, as compared to some of my um, white American women counterparts. So I think things like that, my own observation and experience is that yes, we face special challenges, but everybody's point is valid. And uh, so, can we go to the next slide? So here's where I think maybe I'll let Pramila speak to this slide. South Asian women in the US, what kinds of abuse. So the different kinds of abuse you can experience in a very, very rough categories is, of course, physical abuse, sexual abuse, sexual rape and sexual harassment, economic abuse, where you are not free to control your own finances, emotional abuse, yelling, manipulation, erosion of self-worth, demeaning, lack of self-determination. Again, we talked about, whether you can make decisions about your own decisions, and stereotypes and labels. So again, what we talked about earlier, that women can be labeled as aggressive when the same behavior in a man would carry a different label. So which of these categories, Pramila, do you most uh, deal with in Sanjeevani?
Actually, all of them, especially the first two rows, are most apt when clients come to Sanjeevani. Physical abuse, economic abuse still going on, sexual abuse. Nobody realizes that married women can also be raped, and of course, one of the key part is emotional abuse.
Yeah,
So.
I think that for a lot of the South Asian women in this country come from pretty educated background, yet that emotional abuse is probably a big one where your sense of self-worth or your uh, you know your ability to participate equally in decisions is not the same. I mean,
Shalini, you mentioned about education. Unfortunately, education means nothing when women experience all of this. And a lot of these women who we talk to, having a very high level of education. They're professionals. Some of them are doctors, engineers, but they are facing or they face similar situations.
Right. So they face similar situations as this, that they are also experiencing equal, uh, a lot of physical and sexual abuse. Yes. Okay.
So education is not something which has helped them cross this barrier to say, I do not want to be emotionally abused, I don't want economic abuse, or I can prevent physical abuse happening to me. So unfortunately, again, this is also a huge barrier to South Asian women that we've seen.
Wonderful. Anybody else like to talk about their experience? So how many people on the call know someone, family member or a close friend who's experienced the physical or sexual abuse? I mean, so I'm trying to get to how common is it? How common?
Yeah, physical abuse happens, but I think I saw a note somewhere that it's not reported. They'll say, hey, it's just, there was a movie a few years back called Thappad, meaning slap. So they say, oh, it's just, one slap. He must be angry or, something I must have triggered him. So it was just one slap. So a lot of the time, the physical abuse never gets reported. So we don't have the statistics, but it happens.
Yeah. Actually, that's a lovely movie that I loved. And I belong to a movie discussion group. And we were talking about that movie. And I was so surprised that a lot of women actually felt that, that reacting to that slap was not something that women should have done. So that blew me away because I felt like, that showed to me some internalized oppression there. Uh, I wonder if they would have had the same reaction if the woman had slapped her husband. Would they have said that that's, it's just one slap? So, and again, they showed in the movie there was years of emotional abuse and neglect, which led to the reaction to that one slap. So it was not an isolated thing, it was something that had built up into that reaction. Okay, next slide, please. But hey, we are here to celebrate International Women's Day. It's 2026. So let's look at where have we made progress, which is real. So I think I am so happy with this statistics. Girls are now surpassing boys in completion rates across every major racial and ethnic group. This comes from the Pew Research. So, college completion, all of those statistics, women are outpacing men. Wonderful. Seats in parliament steadily gaining in across the world. I'm happy to see that. So nearly 100 countries have scrapped discriminatory laws, from child marriage bans to consent-based rape laws, in just the past 5 years. I think that's big. That's big. And a little tidbit here about mobile phone ownership, only 7% gap remains. I think mobile phones has also connected world to a lot of uh, access to a lot of information, access to being connected. It's really become our life these days. So I think these are causes to celebrate, honestly. Can we have the next slide? Yeah. So path forward. Uh, let's talk about the steps to change. First thing is know your rights. Understand, and Pramila just said earlier that it's so difficult. People don't know what legal protections are available to you. So knowledge is, and I think Sanjeevani is doing a great job educating people on that. What are your rights? You know, so getting out of that internalized oppression and being able to perceive and see inequity, that is the first step. Stand up and speak out. Sometimes, what happens is that person who sticks their neck out gets hammered down. Those bopping things, that little thing game where something sticks out and you immediately bop it down. I mean, that happens, unfortunately, to people who stick their necks out. But I tell you, be the nail that sticks out, because silence protects the system and your voice disrupts them. Take on the little bop on the head, get that label on yourself. Change will not happen without that, without the few people sticking up like nails. Don't be a bystander. Sometimes, like this is an exercise we used to do and say, if somebody is beating up their wife in your neighbor's house, what should you do? So let me ask
So,
you a question.
Shalini, I would like to call out, don't be a bystander. And I would like to applaud the many, many bystanders who have called Sanjeevani in the last 10 years, citing that they know someone or a neighbor or a friend who is going through concerns as you shared. So, a lot of applause and kudos to those bystanders who have chosen to speak and help others.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Some people have this value system where they say, oh, it's not my business. It's their business. What's happening in their home, it's their privacy. No. When you see abuse of any form, it is your responsibility to get involved, to report on it. I wouldn't say
Absolutely.
you should get in their house and put yourself in danger, because I have talked to police units who said that domestic violence is the most serious crime, and they never send one person alone. They always send teams when there is an issue of domestic violence, because that is the time when they can face, guns and be shot at. So I wouldn't say that you should go into their house and try to intervene, but you call the authorities.
True.
Support other women, lift as you climb. So again, champion, mentor, and just lift up women around you. We often hear the term where they say women bring other women down. I mean, there's this competition, which is a human thing, where if you feel competitive, you want to bring the other person down. But really, if we have been held down by society, how are we going to rise up unless we all bring each other up? And so, get rid of that little competitive instinct in you and throw yourself into being a champion for other women. This one I feel is really, really important. I mean, I asked myself, and we all ask ourselves, if women raise boys, how come we still have a world where there is this inequality? How come we don't raise boys that are more sensitive or want to be uh, a more equal world? So this is something which is personal belief of mine, having worked in system change, and you can challenge that if you wish. Societal change where there is redistribution of power does not happen without a struggle, unfortunately. I have not seen yet any redistribution of power happening in society without an active struggle. It has not happened to the caste, lower caste. It has not happened to females. It has not happened to, you know, African Americans. It's all come with civil rights has come with a struggle. That's unfortunately the way our systems are created. So it is our responsibility as the people rearing children is to bring up boys who actually believe in equal rights. I think that should be something within our control. And get involved. I would say join a women's empowerment organization, put your time, energy, and voice to create change. So join, there are so many of them out there, including Sanjeevni. Join some organization that you can do meaningful work. So let me just, we have 5 minutes left, and I'll very quickly share my own personal story. I think I came from a privileged family in that I came from a family where women were treated as equals. From the moment we were little kids, we were given equal status. And I think, and I also learned from my father that when you have privilege, you need to use that privilege to make a change in society. Because those who are not privileged are disadvantaged. They don't have those advantages that you have, that you can go out and make and fight for those changes. So I feel that it is our responsibility to get involved in changing the world, because it doesn't happen by itself. It happens with sweat and blood and concerted effort. And I want to end by thanking Sanjeevni for the wonderful work that they're doing. And thank you all for attending today and for participating in the discussion. Thank you, Pramila.
Thank you, Shalini. I think the presentation was wonderful and a lot of specific insights were shared. And what was really great was the participation and viewpoints from our attendees. So thanks, everyone. I know Women's Day is only once a year, but I always call out. It's actually every day.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.